I would like to introduce Jeff Killian from the Omsted Center. If you're not familiar, the Omsted Center for Landscape Preservation is the gold standard for historic landscape preservation in the National Park Service. I know. And Jeff has been working on this since started in 2018. The Historic Carriage Road System Vista Management Plan is a historical landscape architect. And there's other folks, a couple other folks from Omsted Center. Bob Page is the director of Omsted Center, and Elliot Foles, what's your title? Historical landscape architect?
I work for Bob.
Oh, and James Neely, new guy at the Omsted Center. So welcome to them, and Jeff, you ready to take it in?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, welcome everybody. This is the Historic Preservation Vista Management Plan for the Carriage Road System. That's a great shot of Eagle Lake. So just a little bit about how we're going to present today. We begin with the project purpose, a brief history and development of the Carriage Road System, the Carriage Road characteristics, project methodology, current Vista management, and future Vista management, and then we'll end with some time for questions. For those who may not know where we are, here's some orientation on the map on the right. The familiar unigrid map showing the eastern half of the island, Bar Harbor at upper right, Seal Harbor and Northeast Harbor at the bottom. The Park's 3 historic circulation systems are also shown in this map. The motor roads with thick red lines, the hiking trails with thin gray lines, and carriage roads with thick dark gray lines. This Vista Management Plan for the Historic Carriage Road System provides updated baseline data for the carriage road vistas within the park boundaries. It documents and summarizes previous Vista management work on the carriage roads, articulates a treatment approach and management philosophy, documents existing conditions of the vistas, and provides general management recommendations. It also informs funding requests, partnerships for facilitating long-term maintenance, and environmental compliance for Vista clearing programs. Management of the carriage road system is supported by the park's 1992 General Management Plan, which directed the rehabilitation and maintenance of the carriage roads. The GMP also recommended the preparation of maintenance guidelines to direct the long-term preservation of the carriage road system. Numerous projects have been completed to fulfill the goals of the GMP, including the 1995 Vista Assessment Report by Presley Associates. We'll grab it there on the left. The report also serves as a companion to the 2015 Vista Management Plan for the Historic Motor Road System by the Omsted Center, prepared to support park efforts to rehabilitate obstructed vistas, maintain existing vistas, and identify new vistas on Mount Desert Island and Scooded Peninsula. The timing of the Carriage Road Vista project, which began in 2018, coincided with the retirement of the park's arborist, Mr. Jeff Gray, who had over 2 decades of experience managing the Carriage Road vistas. Compiling and consolidating years of record keeping and treatment recommendations for the vistas thus became a high priority for the park. Sadly, Jeff passed away midway through this project, and therefore this report is dedicated to Jeff's expertise and passion for the vistas, carriage roads, and Acadia. And there's Jeff at upper right. Miss him very much. So a little brief history and development of the carriage roads. As most of you know, the carriage roads were envisioned, designed, and funded by John D. Rockefeller Jr. 111 years ago. Beginning in 1913, Rockefeller constructed his first carriage road to enjoy carriage driving and sightseeing on his 15-acre Seal Harbor estate. Some of these carriage roads and bridle paths crossed into land held by the Hancock County Trustees for Public Reservations. which was formed in 1901 to protect island land from uncontrolled development. In 1921, Rockefeller began planning for an even greater expansion of the carriage road system on other lands he owned on the island, as well as land within Sur de Mont National Monument, the forerunner of Acadia National Park. Rockefeller's plan was approved by the superintendent, George Dorr, and NPS leadership. When the last carriage road bridge was completed in 1940, Rockefeller had skillfully built a 57-mile-long network of rustic carriage roads that continues today to provide motor-free access to some of the most scenic destinations on the eastern half of MDI. The carriage roads were deliberately designed to provide panoramic views of the island and the surrounding waters, as well as more intimate framed vistas of marshes, streams, and bridges. You can see in those photos, the top right, one of the gatehouses. The bottom picture is one of the bridges, and there's JDR at the top left. Rockefeller employed local engineers to oversee the construction. Noted architects William Wells Bosworth and Charles Stoughton designed the majority of the bridges, and architect Grosvenor Atterbury designed the gatehouses. Renowned landscape architect Beatrix Ferran worked with Rockefeller for nearly 15 years to develop roadside planting and scenic vistas. With the planning, design, and construction of the carriage roads complete in 1940, Rockefeller then turned his attention to implementing plans for the park's motor road system, which was completed in 1958, 2 years before his death. During that time, he established and funded an ongoing maintenance program for the carriage roads, bridges, and gatehouses, and funded reforestation efforts in the wake of the 1947 Bar Harbor fire that unfortunately burned thousands of acres and many of Ferran's plantings. In the later years of his life, Rockefeller transferred ownership of the carriage roads, bridges, and gatehouses to the NPS. And after his death, maintenance of the carriage road system became the responsibility of the park. So there's some more historic scenes of the carriage roads, very popular for horses, the Duckbrook Bridge, top right, and Beatrix Ferran is there on the left.
With your little dog.
Always, she had her. In the decades that followed, inadequate funding for maintenance and competing park management priorities led to a decline in the condition of the road system, characterized by eroded surfaces, clogged culverts and waterways, deteriorated bridges, and overgrown views and vistas. Fortunately, in the late 1980s and early 1990s, various resource studies and park management plans recognized the historic importance of the carriage road system and recommended its rehabilitation. In 1990, a 1.5-mile privately funded demonstration project was undertaken to show the public what the carriage roads looked like when they were originally constructed and well maintained. This project included rehabilitation of 5 vistas. The demonstration project was widely praised, prompting an agreement whereby the federal government would allocate $4 million of funding to be matched by private donations raised by the Friends of Acadia. The federal money would pay for rehabilitating the roads, while the Friends money would create an endowment to fund yearly maintenance in perpetuity. In 1991, the Friends initiated their campaign, and by 1996, it raised $4.3 million. The first phase of the rehabilitation project was funded in 1992. Work was directed at stabilizing the road system and preserving and preservation maintenance, including cleaning debris and woody vegetation from the roadside ditches and shoulders, cleaning out the culverts, and regrading areas of washouts. In 1993, another test section, 1 mile in length, was completed to inform preparation of detailed plans and specifications for rehabilitating the entire system, which began the following year, 1994. Much of this work was completed in 1996, except for the bridges and the road segments circling Eagle Lake. Not long ago, in 2021, the park completed the Eagle Lake segments, marking the last major phase of the Carriage Road restoration project. So there's some distinct Carriage Road characteristics that make this resource nationally significant, according to the National Register. The park's 2016 foundation documents present several significant statements that describe the distinctive nature of Acadia and why the park is important. The carriage road system is described in one of the statements. I quote, Acadia National Park contains design landscapes composed of nationally significant cultural resources, including the finest example of a historic carriage road system in the U.S. and associated structures that embody the NPS picturesque and rustic design styles. Indeed, the carriage roads were state-of-the-art at the time of their construction and are one of the best examples of broken stone roads, a type of road commonly used at the turn of the 20th century. They are true roads, approximately 16 feet wide, with gently sloping and curved alignments that utilize locally quarried granite to blend the roads into the island's landscape. The roads themselves were engineered and constructed to Rockefeller's exacting specifications and minute attention to detail. As with the other park circulation systems, they were designed to fit within the landscape by following the existing contours of the land and preserving trees along their routes. Retaining walls, guard walls, also known as Rockefeller's teeth, and culverts were constructed with local stone. Vegetated roadside ditches of mosses, ferns, and other small plants help visually soften the road edges. The roads and bridges were sited to take advantage of scenic vistas and other natural features in the landscape. Gatehouses were designed in the French Norman Revival style and nestled into the woods along the roads. In summary, the overall design of the roads, bridges, and gatehouses reflected a deliberate concern for the natural environment, and every effort was made to blend these man-made elements into the surrounding landscape. The National Register of Historic Places states that the carriage roads are nationally significant because of their exceptional quality of design, craftsmanship, and construction, and because they retain a high level of integrity, and because they represent Rockefeller's contributions to the national park system. So one of my favorite photos is the bottom right. It's also one of Bob's favorites because it's a culvert. He loves culverts. That's one of the stone box culverts along the road. And bottom left, you can see some of the coping stones or Rockefeller's teeth. The system also had a lot of waterways that fed in. They captured water from upland areas and fed them into culverts to go under the roads. That's what the top left photo shows. And then the top right photo is an example of a natural feature that the road went around rather than trying to blast through. Okay, a little bit about the project scope. The scope of this project encompasses 182 vistas currently managed along 45 miles of carriage roads located within the park boundaries. So the graphic at the right shows where the vistas are with yellow dots. The large number of managed carriage road vistas warranted dividing this report into 3 volumes. Volume 1 includes the project information, historic overview, treatment philosophy, carriage road district and segment maps, and tabular vista data. Volumes 2 and 3 provide details for each vista, including descriptions of location, intended view, previous vista management, proposed vista management area, treatment recommendations, as well as individual site plans and existing condition photographs. So how are we going to do this? The project methodology was very complex. The primary task, of course, was centered around documenting the existing conditions, delineating vista management boundaries, and preparing treatment prescriptions for the vistas. The project team developed a methodology to accomplish these tasks. Identify, measure, and photograph existing carriage road vistas based on the numbering system established in 1995 by Presley Associates. 2, describe each vista management area and the intended view. 3, summarize past management work for each vista. 4, evaluate if the intended view was still intact. 5, modify general management goals, or identify, management goals for each vista. And 6, provide site plans for each vista that show geospatial boundaries of the vista management area. The undertaking of these tasks can be divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 is analysis of the Presley vista areas, which was done prior to the fieldwork. The Presley report identified 253 side vistas, which are the views looking left and right of the road, and corridor vistas, which are those looking down the road center line. Presley assigned each vista a number and, when needed, letters. So in the graphic to the right, the graphic to the left, Presley compiled physical details and characteristics of each vista into a table format. And that's what that graphic to the left shows. The vistas were also illustrated on a hand-drawn map with lines, arrows, and hatching as seen in the portion of their map at the right, going right. Through diligent analysis, Presley selected 162 of the 253 vistas for active management. In subsequent years, Jeff Gray and his management team began managing some of the other unselected Presley vistas, increasing the total number of managed vistas to 196. Using the Parks Geographic Information System, or GIS, Gray's 196 vista locations were digitized as polygons, or vista management areas. Presley's lines, arrows, and hatching were also georeferenced. Overlaying the Parks Vista management areas and the Presley Vista locations, the top aerial photographs made it possible to compare the two. In many cases, the two were generally close in alignment, as seen at the map at the right, but in other cases, they were not. So in that map, the light blue line is the Presley Vista, and then the dotted yellow line is the Vista management area. Additional valuable information for the 196 vistas came from notes collected by Jeff Gray, who compiled several spreadsheets and notebooks during his many years of Carriage Road Vista management. And examples of those notes are at the far right and at the bottom. He used Excel spreadsheets, did some freehand drawings, and notes in a leather notebook that he carried around. Phase 2, field reconciliation of vistas and new vista identification. In 2 week-long field trips in June and September of 2018, the project team ground truthed the Parks Vista management areas and the Presley vistas. Work was guided by 3 objectives. 1, locate and document vista management areas. 2, determine if the subjects of the vistas are still visible. And 3, review Presley and Jeff Gray's previous recommendations for vista management and update where applicable. For each vistas, these objectives yielded one of 4 outcomes. First was the Presley Vista was confirmed. Second, the Presley Vista was updated. And third, the Presley Vistas were combined. So if there were 2 right next to each other and they had the same subject of view, we just combined them. And then the last one was a new vista that we identified in the field that were not in the Presley report. In the first 3 outcomes, the Presley report's vista number system was retained or it was merged with an adjacent vista. In the 4th outcome for new vistas, They were assigned a number based on the closest Presley Vista number or an altogether new number. With this information, the project team reduced the number of managed vistas from 196 to 182. For phase 3, field documentation of reconciled vistas and new vistas, the project team marked vista management areas with lengths of rebar along the roadside, topped with orange caps engraved with the vista number. The project team also documented these areas with longitudinal and latitudinal points, digital photographs, and tabular data, including distance in feet from the beginning of the carriage road segment. This intentional data redundancy will ensure future park managers can find these vista management areas in the field. At left are 3 sample images showing the front, left, center, and right points of Vista 32. There's 3 photographs at the top. And then all these details were compiled into tables that are found in the report. And an excerpt of that table is at the bottom. In the field, the project team estimated the depth of each vista management area that you would need to have to achieve the subject of the view shed. With the front points located along the road edge, the back points extended outward from the road edge and were typically determined by topography, vegetation, and other natural features. Fieldwork also noted other features and conditions unique to each vista, such as streams and wetlands, specimen trees, buildings and structures, nearby trails or roads, or adjacent development. Awareness of such features will be valuable in future management actions. And the last step, or the last phase, was preparation of maps and recommendations, and this was the most time-consuming part of the project. Information for each vista has been collated in 4-page spreads in volumes 2 and 3 of this report. The spread of vista number 1 is shown at the right. There's narrative information on the left page, the map on the right page, and then the 3rd page has photographs of the start and end point and other photographs deemed necessary, and then more narratives that describe unique conditions to each vista. So we have this 4-page spread for all 182 vistas. A key component of this project and the most time-consuming was the production of the maps and the recommendations for each vista. This work was accomplished by many talented individuals from 2018 to 2021. Most of them were based at the Omsted Center, but Jennifer Piper sat here and worked on quite a few of the vistas in 2019. We couldn't have done it without it. Current vista management. Since the mid-1990s, the park's road division has accomplished periodic maintenance and vegetation management of 196 vistas on the park's carriage road system. Based on this completed vista management plan, this number is now 182. Few vistas have been managed since 2018. Constraints include cutting restrictions due to endangered bats, soft road beds in the winter and spring, and the increase in heavy rain and wind events that create washouts, wall failures, and downed trees. Future vista management. From 1913 to 1940, John D. Rockefeller Jr. designed the carriage roads to create numerous vistas that highlighted Mount Desert Island's spectacular scenery, being remarkable and significant for excellence in engineering and landscape design, and also for association with historical figures such as Rockefeller. The original and ongoing purpose of the carriage road system remains for the enjoyment of visitors, a means by which they are introduced to Acadia's scenic beauty and are encouraged to explore further. Moving forward, future vista management work will be guided by this plan and its treatment philosophy that articulates the essential qualities of the carriage road system's historical significance and establishes principles intended to enhance and perpetuate those qualities. Consistent with approved planning documents, Acadia National Park will continue to manage the historic carriage road system in order to provide visitors with access to park scenery. For the road system's vistas, this means using best management practices that balance vista management goals with natural resource values. The two cross sections shown here promote the naturalistic transitional appearance, including undulating edges and a tapered vertical difference between cut or pruned vegetation and adjacent untreated woodlands. The long-term goal of these management practices will gradually alter the composition of vegetation growing within the boundaries of the designated vista management areas to favor understory vegetation and mid-story forest species that require less frequent cutting and treatment. Vista treatment projects will be developed and undertaken through a collaborative process that includes natural and cultural resource specialists. Pre- and post-treatment records will be prepared and preserved in order to inform future adaptive vista management efforts. And that is it. Any questions?
Folks online can also ask questions in the chat and we'll call on you.
Yeah, okay.
Good. So of the new vistas that you identified that were not part of the Presley, how did that go exactly? So were they because they were kind of being managed as a vista but weren't part of the Presley kind of official at that point, but then
most of them were down by the Stanley Brook Bridge. Coming into that bridge and on the bridge and then on the other side. And Jeff had not been actively managing there, and Presley hadn't picked it up, but we thought it was an important part to make sure that that's such a beautiful bridge with the stream going under one side and hiking trail on the other and the motor road. So we wanted to highlight those. Yeah. I mean, you can really, it's a clear view now, but we just wanted to get it on paper.
I'm gonna say, I wouldn't worry about it, it's already been cut.
Yes.
Yes. Get the car.
I'll ask you a question. Does the report prescribe the method of treatment, like in a couple cases in time that I've been really used fire to maintain a couple of vistas on the carriage roads? Obviously, most of them are mechanically treated and with chainsaws, but does the report have anything to say about that?
No, except that we assume it would be mechanical, and fire would be a much different animal. So the assumption is it would be mechanical, but that's the discretion of managing each vista and the best way to go about it. And if fire is considered the best management practice, then we would go.
The key goal was really to confirm the area of management. So what is the beginning, the end, the middle, and then the character. So you don't want to, and how deep. So you want to just confirm that, get consensus that yes, this is a vista that we should, abilities we can to maintain as part of the visitor experience. How it was done, except for the general character. So we don't want to clear cut. So we emphasize the feel and the character of it with edges and transitions. So it's more about the look than the actual.
It sounds like in the report, if we told JDR Jr. that we were burning vistas, he would come back in and replant that immediately after, right?
Right. And we actually learned a lot from the motor road vista plan in creating these vista management areas to just confine it to what do you need to get the point of the view. And within that vista management area, maybe you probably won't cut the whole thing, but you're going to use that area to transition into the view, and there might be a filtered view with big tree in the foreground or whatever. And we also decided during that we were all gung ho to get the front points marked along the road and the back points depth. But some of those vistas go down to steep hills. We did, the first vista on Kibo, and we got on the one-way that way. It took us, I think,
That was the
half a
last
day.
one we did.
That's the last one we did, the first and last. Just climbing up and down. And, you know, that one you can climb up and down. There's quite a few other vistas on the motor road system and the carriage road.
Operational leadership kind of questions
Yeah.
there.
Health.
The other thing that I wanted to just remind folks was, we were working on the motor road one and this one, the carriage roads, when Keith was really beginning to tune into the FMSS, asset management. And I remember him being keen on identifying these polygons as assets that, to which you could direct funding and resources.
Mm-hmm.
So to get it kind of institutionalized or baked into the kind of annualized maintenance.
Do you remember what the total acreage of managed area you delineated was?
It's in there, but I don't remember that.
Yeah.
It's not as large as the motor road.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller vistas.
Yeah.
Slower speed.
Right.
So,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, so we're talking about the goal and creating the view of this beautiful place while also like giving enough education.
Mhm.
Is there a set standard by like how much to cut and how much to leave? Or is it just up to the people working that day, or how do we, I guess along with your question, how do we?
Well, we have the general principles outlined, but it really, each vista should be, that scoping of how we're gonna cut it should be discussed before any cutting actually happens, like what trees are we gonna leave in the foreground, or maybe we take the foreground trees out. It's gonna depend on each vista.
And who is important to have like in these discussions before the work is actually done?
I would say the cutting team, the maintenance crew, and Gail and
Natural
Becky.
resources, yeah, it's really an art, it's a bit of an art, as you can imagine, so there's no one.
Yeah.
So I think and they're gonna, different factors are gonna play in at different times, so we don't wanna try to get too prescriptive, but really leave the discretion up to the people in the resource managing it to determine, okay, we know what the goal is, but this time we'll try this, because it's gonna grow again.
Yeah.
That's one thing you can be guaranteed, you're gonna come back. So, just recognizing that the best minds will be at the time, with all the current information they have to kind of make a decision about what's the best approach today. But we know what the goal is.
Yes.
So we kind of set the table for the goal of the area and then left that up to ongoing.
And I think it was the right call not to drill too far into the details for each vista
Because they are so
at this point, because we, just driving around this week, we've noticed conditions that were present in 2018 when we did the field work. There weren't any foreground trees in, let's say, a particular vista, but now those have grown up. So you would want to address those. They weren't a problem then, but now they are, because things grow so fast around here with all the rain.
In response to that, your question too, I'd encourage yourself and everybody to read the foreword by Jeff Gray. And I think that it's really great that it's dedicated to him, because I think the park was very fortunate to have him as the initial vista manager, because he was actually kind of an artist. And I think he really brought his artistic senses to his work in vista management. So building on his legacy of those kind of choices.
That and his wife was the botanist of the park.
Yeah.
Good combination.
Yeah, and each of these vista narratives, the 4-page spreads, encapsulates a lot of what he did and his ideas for the vista. So we'd want to read those too before you go look.
And Deja is on the cutting crew, and there's a couple other cutting crew people here.
Great.
And Alex, I think you worked with Jeff for a
I
little
worked
bit.
with Jeff for at least a couple of years before he retired. Yeah.
So he's the link right there.
Yeah.
I remember him talking a lot about the filtered views and the undulating, forest edge and things like that.
Yeah, it's not cutting a utility line.
No,
No.
definitely not.
Linda, do you want to unmute and chime in?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Gosh, it's great to be here and see, like you really highlighted, Jeff, all the work, the hours and hours that it took to create this plan. And so this is a really exciting moment here to see it print and digital. And I think it's exactly right. It's like creating a painting. And I vividly remember like going down. It was a great question that person asked about, well, like, how do you do it? It's like, well, you get people, you go down, you shake the trees, and it's like, it's that one we want to take out. And it really is creating a painting and mixing an artistry of the natural landscape, the look we want to create. And in the end, we always said, make it look like nothing happened. The average visitor is going to go by and not say, oh my God, what happened here? It's like not a clear cut, not a power line, but just that very gentle, oh, wow, it's beautiful. You don't really see the hard work and mechanical cutting, leaving holes on the ground, all those kind of things. Yeah, and and you can ask yourself, hey, what would Jeff Gray do? Because he's still, he just loved what he did, and he brought that passion. And I hope that all the folks in the future that do this kind of work can have that in their mind, that you are creating something amazing, like what Rockefeller did, and mix that view of the human element and the natural world and create something beautiful. So thank you, everyone. And I'm kind of curious what is going to happen in the future, because I was at Acadia this summer. I try and come every summer. And really are seeing the vistas growing in and wondering what the future, funding crew plan is to keep it going, since we have done all this amazing work.
Cycle. So the new cycle, we were talking about this earlier. I mean, we're gonna get $1 million a year and have 1.1, 1.2.
Oh, the new formula.
The cycle, we parks actually get control for the first time in decades over what we're doing with our cyclic budget, as opposed to having to compete for project here, project there. We're gonna actually, we as the leadership team need to say, okay, we're gonna prioritize this, and so we're gonna set aside. I mean, Vista management is a perfect cyclic task, so that's what we need to do. I was going to share, folks are interested in watching a real life going on right now with Vista Management train wreck that's going on in the Park Service. Look at what's going on in the George Washington Memorial Parkway in the DC area. The Parkway is a historic motor road that was built mostly 1929, 1929, 1932, and they had many historic vistas, and the park had no capacity to manage them over the last 30 years or so, so they grew up completely. And then the park got funded in a giant Great American Outdoors Act project to redo the road and to reopen the vistas. And starting about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they started reopening the vistas using the utility line corridor kind of method, and they have stepped in it. And Congress has gotten involved, and the whole project has been shut down. And so this is a huge Great American Outdoors Act project, huge priority for the Park Service, and really, really good goals. I mean, again, cultural resource background, like these are vistas that used to be there, driving the scenic Orland Road of the Washington Monument, the Potomac River, things like that, and they were not maintained. And then the park went to maintain them, but to an extreme. And every environmental organization, every commuter, every member of Congress that drives on that road struck lightning bolts down in the Park Service for just the last couple of weeks. So if you haven't read about that, read up on it. It's happening literally as we speak.
So the strategy to make it look like nothing happened is a good one.
It's a good one, but it's the juxtaposition that we as managers, leaders, and program managers who have no money whatsoever to do any of this. So that's why I'm excited with this site fund source coming up. I mean, in some ways, I can't fault the part. There was no money to manage these vistas, and so they didn't manage them. And then they got an influx of money to manage them, and it was overmanaged.
It's also, I think, you can say contributing factor there too is likely, they outsourced it.
Right, they took it.
And, we've been, like we have unique expertise to do this kind of work. Like it is an artist kind of thing. It's not a utility corridor. And like, we have unique expertise. We've got to be the ones to do this kind of work. Same thing with like trail construction on historic trails. Like, we have the unique specialization, and to just outsource it results in a product that we're not necessarily happy with at the end. And so it kind of points to, being able to invest in our own staff and maintain those skills internally so that we can keep these traditions alive and craftsmanship alive that goes with this. It's really important.
Yeah, when you were talking, I was reflecting on between John D. Rockefeller's death in 1960. It took around 30 years for it to got deteriorated to a point where something had to be done. And now, since the early 90s, it's been another 30 years to get where we are today. So I'm just reminded how things are cyclical. And things wax and wane, they go down, and I guess now we need to invest more. But it can come back very quickly with the energy and attention and investment in these things.
But once you lose them, regaining them becomes so much more difficult. Because we saw that with the motor roads, so many were gone because we hadn't maintained them. And the idea of opening up the view just seems so dramatic because it wasn't kind of a little bit impeded, it was a lot. And so that just became the issue of, wow, that's going to be a big intervention, and should we do that, and can we do that? So keeping kind of to the extent possible on top of it so that we have them, it seems like the intervention cycle is just as much easier.
That's what I remember for the motor roads, some of the lower reaches of Cadillac Mountain Road, there was vistas. Remember this one where we abandoned them. We just said, no way, because it was a mature forest by that time. And the environmental impacts and just the disturbance of that was just too much to really take seriously.
So what about climate change? You are not going to hold these vistas to even the treatment level or the views or the species that were there 30 years ago. And everything is moving so much faster. Down there, they're going to have a massive problem with invasive. I can't imagine the disaster they're dealing with, not just with the cutting, but what's going to come in as a result. We're really lucky here because Jesse doesn't allow invasive plants in this park. But
keep that going.
But we've lost, red pines. We're looking at other invasive species that are going to take out our tree species. I mean, things are changing really, really rapidly. So, you go out and cut one of those vistas tomorrow, I'm looking at you, and then, 3 years from now, it's just, so how do you deal with the philosophy of
Jeff touched on that. In addition to that, artist sensibilities, I think he touched briefly on horticultural sensibilities. And that in caretaking, you can encourage certain plants. For instance, instead of large overstory forest species, you could favor the understory and the mid-story species that don't have the propensity to grow up to block the view as much or as fast as a full-blown forest species. So that's part of it too. It's making, not only shaking the tree and putting on your beret and thinking that's a nice painting, but also taking a look at the little plants that are growing there and saying that's a nice plant because it'll get bigger, but it won't block the view. So knowing your plants is also a big part.
That's something that Jeff Gray always was looking at, and I think that's the importance here. The cycle cannot be 30 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so we know that. It needs to be much shorter, and probably even 5 years is like, between time vistas get touched, that might be too much. But that was always something, right, Alex? You would, like, it wasn't just sort of limiting, this and that, it was also being like, for the next time, like, we're gonna leave that, like, we're not gonna, because, like, there's a lot of like, but I can't quite see the ridge, like, the next time, and I think in his mind, it was not like a decade from now, but just like in a few years, we come back and have the light touch.
Yeah.
And whether that's just for the early successional species or the things that are gonna come up quick into the view, or be able to like reassess because, looking at different, disease or damage on some of the overstory ones that were really framing it, but then you might need to take another look at that. So it just seems to me like how we move forward and kind of to Linda's question of like, what does it look like for the future? I don't know, and to be nimble, right? For like whether it's invasive or like certain things are not, we have all these forest paths, like we have to be able to get in there frequently. But hopefully with like touches as we go.
Like everything else, we're just gonna have to pay attention to what's happening, what we do, and then adapt. And just do the best prescription, so it's, as you see things and what's happening, you're gonna react, and you're gonna change your approach to promote what you want and to hopefully minimize what you don't want to happen.
I'm just curious, with 180, however many vistas, like how many humans does it take to be able to do green things all 5?
More than one.
You're not gonna do it, you're not gonna do it with human touch. The only way to maintain something like that is with a hook. You'd have to put a piece of equipment in there and use a regular piece of harvesting equipment.
Oh no, I'm saying like how many people do you need to, if you wanted every 5 years to touch a vista, like how many people do you need on a first?
The whole program.
To manage them?
Yeah, what would you
All
need?
doing
Dream
all
crew.
doing
Your
dream
dream
crew. You could.
What, how
You
many
couldn't do it. There's no possible way you can do it in a cycle here.
in a year?
There's no way.
No, but I think the interesting
No
is, to your point, what do you look at, you're dreaming? What would be the cycle and which ones would you touch, what's year 1, 2?
That's
Right.
I think that gets into what, like you said, some of them are different, right?
Right.
Some of them
And
have,
some of
like,
them
I've got a really effect, like, probably not
So
very.
you get to think of, how many folks can see in that one vista? And then in focus on those, along these small peekaboo stuff, where you just getting a quick glimpse at a low speed, you're not gonna be able to touch them all. It's too much. We can't even if we have a big crew, we can't even keep up with what's going in on the roads, let alone to touch the vistas stuff.
And then every
To
time
be
there's a
honest with
storm.
you. I mean, once in a while, we get an opportunity to get into one and work with one. Yeah,
I would just say sorry.
No, go for it.
I mean, to piggyback off that, I know you mentioned on one side the constraints we have. I mean, I've been doing tree work now for, 6, 7 years with the park, and the last 2, 3 years, 4 years maybe, we've been a crew of 2, maybe 3 in the summertime, which, like, as Stevie said, like, we can hardly keep up with cyclic maintenance, and then this year was the absolute worst year we've ever had as far as storm cleanup. I mean, what we normally finished in May, we didn't finish till August. Chipping, getting everything cleaned up, my poor crew still had to chipper for way more time than they wanted to be this year. The bat restrictions, I mean, I'm not hating on bats, we gotta protect them, I fully understand, but we can't cut anything above 3 inches between mid-March to mid-November. And then, as we all know, the carriage roads are soup between mid-November and mid-March. And, so then we create a bigger problem bringing equipment out to the carriage roads in the wintertime, messing up, so like we just have all these constraints we're working against. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know that my crew is already at like max capacity basically. So something bigger has to happen in order for this kind of maintenance. Like I don't think it's something that we realistically can take on at this point. That's just.
Some rough back of the napkin math is if you did one a week for a whole season, you could probably get through them all in about a decade.
Wow. 10 years cycle isn't bad.
But that's if that's all you were doing, right?
Well, if you only did like, yeah, 1 a week, depending on, some of you might be able to do, within there, but yeah, that's kind of what I estimate.
And that's not including the weeks for the back to
Yeah, exactly. That's just some amount of like 6 months in a year.
And we also spent, I would say like at least 3 months, maybe a little bit more, like Alex said, just getting the carriage roads open after these winter storms, and making them usable again. So, like you touched on earlier with climate change, like, it seems like a bit bigger than what we can take on.
Well, I hope that this report doesn't present you with a bad feeling of like, we're not getting to all this. I think that it is, even though it is frustrating, and it might be damn near impossible to get to all of them in a reasonable cycle. I think it's tremendous that we have it documented and what's been done in the past. And it's like everything else in the Park Service, we just do the best we can. And now you've got this report and chip away at it to the extent that you can.
I think it helps you make the case for what, or at least figure out what it would take to do more. And you recognize and know the limitations, but you've got the documentation that says, okay, here it all is. And this is what we're intended to do. Doesn't mean we're ever gonna maybe get there, but at least we can advocate for doing more and trying, aspirational. Okay, to do so, we need X, and can we get that additional?
The great part of this is that we have them, we have an GIS. So at some point, when we do find that spot where we're able to jump into this and get funding and get folks and do different things, we don't have to go hunt this stuff down.
We think about what we need.
We'll know where the center line is, we'll know where the ends are, and we'll know where the depth is. And it'll be there, so that, like you said, when you have an opportunity, that's what it seems like, when we have these opportunities, little windows, that we can grab stuff like that.
And be reminded also that the funding for this project, to this significant extent, came from the Parks partner.
Yeah.
With the Friends. So we need to acknowledge that, and just the way that the Friends also funded and spearheaded the rehabilitation of the carriage roads way back in the 90s. They were involved with the demonstration mile and all that important initial work.
I was looking at a picture this morning of me and the staff standing on the drag box on that mile. Finished surface now.
And you haven't changed a bit.
Kevin Lining's in it as well.
Oh, we should get that
Yes.
picture on the board. That'd be great.
Can I just add too that way back in the past, we worked with the University of Maine Forestry Camp, and they would come and do maybe 1 or 2 every year. Things changed up at the University of Maine, but that was a great way to do some focused big work, and it worked really, really well. I also think that you could, like with invasives management, you can even have a volunteer crew probably work on a few of the vistas that just require that aren't steep, just some little cutting, maybe cutting out some of the pines. I think with a correct management way of thinking, get a lot done for the least amount of cost in the most kind of creative way using the resources we have.
Linda, this is Steve. We use FOA's volunteer crew to do a lot of that flat vista stuff for us.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. Hey, Steve. It's great to see everybody.
So the format of the report, just so, it ended up being, what's the total, Jeff? Is this our largest report ever? Did you tell me that? We had an 800-page.
Clocking in 900 pages.
900, Jeff did. The resource deserves it. So we did print. We printed the first volume, which is kind of the big piece. Why are we doing this? What's important? Kind of the overall, just thinking about the value of this place and these resources and how to approach them. So all the technical information Vista by Vista is in digital. So those 4 pages for every Vista is available, but it's in a digital format. You print it out if you want to, but we didn't go through the process of producing.
It's by the way compliant and it's on Irma.
Right.
So
It's currently on Irma?
it is currently on.
Currently on Irma. So all 3 volumes are there. We've got copies of the first volume, but the real technical information is all available digitally.
And this is probably one of the last, the slender volume is the volume 1 that's been printed by GPO. It might be one of the last reports that we do for GPO because parks are at least increasingly more interested in the digital product. But we thought these would be nice to distribute to the friends or people who help to fund this project. Also, if they're helpful to stir up some interest, make friends.
More friends.
Make more friends.
Checkbooks.
I hope that it's helpful.
Thank you guys for coming. I think that's a good place. We're at the top of the hour. I think that's a good place to wrap up. Really appreciate it and all the work on the report. Thank you.